My brother stole my life savings after I paid his rent for years, so I cut him off completely and let karma handle the rest. I'm a 29-year-old guy, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the reliable one in my family, the one who didn't crack, didn't complain, didn't ask for help. Growing up, my parents used to say it like it was a compliment. "You're strong. You can handle it." Meanwhile, my younger brother was always introduced with an excuse already attached. "He's sensitive. Life hits him harder. You know how he is." That difference shaped everything. When I was 17, I started working straight out of high school. No gap year. No safety net. I remember my first paycheck smelling like grease and metal from the shop floor, my hands still shaking when I held it. I didn't feel proud, I felt relieved. It meant I didn't have to ask anyone for anything. My brother, on the other hand, drifted. One job here, a dropped course there. Every time he fell behind, someone softened the landing for him. My parents paid a bill. An aunt made a call. There was always a cushion waiting. I watched it happen quietly, telling myself it wasn't my place to resent it. The first time I paid his rent, he called me late at night. His voice was shaky, breath uneven. I'm short this month," he said. "Just this once. I swear." I remember staring at my bank app, thumb hovering, my chest tight. My mom had already texted me, "He's really struggling. You're the only one he listens to." So I sent the money. 1 month's rent. No contract. No conditions. I told myself it didn't matter. Family helps family. You don't keep score when it's blood. But as I lay in bed that night, phone glowing on the nightstand, a strange thought crept in, quiet, unwelcome. It wasn't fear. It was a sense that something had shifted. Like a door I didn't realize I'd opened, and wouldn't be able to close again. At first, it really was just 1 month. That's what I kept telling myself every time I checked my account and saw the balance dip lower than planned. The next month, my brother called again, this time sounding calmer, almost casual. "I'm still catching up," he said. "Next month should be better." I didn't even hesitate. I sent the money before he finished explaining, like it was already my role to fill the gap. That's how it started becoming normal. Months passed, and the calls stopped sounding like emergencies. They turned into updates. "Rent's due tomorrow. My hours got cut. I'll pay you back when things stabilize." No panic. No shame. Just expectation. My parents stopped asking if I could help and started telling me I would. "You're good with money," my dad said once, clapping me on the shoulder. "You're built for this kind of responsibility. Built for it." Like I didn't get tired. Like stress didn't sit in my chest every night. I worked overtime. I skipped weekends out. I told friends I was saving aggressively, leaving out the part where I was saving for everyone but myself. Meanwhile, my brother's life stayed unchanged. Same excuses. Same unfinished plans. New shoes. New phone. Somehow always enough for what he wanted, never enough for rent. One night, I tried to push back. Just a little. "I can't keep doing this forever," I said over the phone. There was a pause. Then his voice hardened. "Wow. I didn't know money mattered more to you than family." Later that night, my mom called. Her tone was disappointed, almost hurt. "He's really sensitive right now," she said. "You know how much pressure breaks him." I stared at the ceiling after we hung up, the room dark except for street light glow leaking through the blinds. No one asked how I was holding up. No one ever did. I wasn't fragile enough to deserve concern. And that's when it hit me, this wasn't help anymore. It was a system. And somehow, without agreeing to it, I had become the foundation holding everyone else up, whether I could afford it or not. I realized early on that I needed a backup, a place no one could touch. So I started saving quietly, obsessively, almost like a ritual. Every paycheck had a portion that never left my account, tucked away like a secret, my little insurance policy against a world that had never treated me as a priority. I didn't tell anyone, not my parents, not my brother, not even my closest friends. Money always created expectations in my family, and I learned that lesson painfully early. I remember staring at the numbers on my screen late one night, the glow illuminating my tired face, thinking about all the months I'd sacrificed, skipped dinners, extra shifts, turning down vacations. The thought of losing my own hard-earned savings because someone else couldn't be responsible made my stomach churn. I swore to myself it would never happen. Not again. But keeping it secret didn't mean it was safe. My brother's curiosity grew, subtle at first. Casual questions about my work, teasing about my mysterious weekend jobs, joking about rich habits I was hiding. He never knew how close he was to the truth, how carefully I had protected that account. I remember one evening, him leaning on the kitchen counter, smirking, "You're always working, always saving. What's the endgame, huh? Planning to leave us all behind?" I laughed it off, a hollow sound that didn't reach my eyes. Just thinking about the future, man. Gotta be ready for whatever comes. Even then, I felt a twinge of unease, a subtle prickling at the back of my mind. Something about his tone didn't sit right, too sharp, too interested. But I pushed it aside, convincing myself I was being paranoid. After all, I'd always been the responsible one, the rational one. My family leaned on me because they trusted me, not because they plotted against me. Still, that night, lying awake, I couldn't shake the thought, maybe curiosity isn't innocent, and maybe the very thing I was guarding most carefully, the foundation of my future, was quietly turning into someone else's target. A small, dangerous seed had been planted, and I didn't even know it yet. It was a rainy Tuesday when my brother called me in full panic mode, his voice shaking in a way I hadn't heard before. "I'm about to be evicted," he said, almost whispering. "They're coming tomorrow, and I don't know what to do." I could hear the faint rumble of traffic outside his apartment and the constant patter of rain against the window, a steady reminder that the world didn't stop for emergencies, or excuses. My chest tightened, that familiar knot of responsibility tightening as I listened. My parents were involved too. My mom's voice wavered over speakerphone. "Please, just help him this one time. You know how he is." My dad chimed in, softer but urgent. "He really needs you. You're the only one he trusts." The guilt hit me like a punch to the stomach, heavier than any paycheck, any sacrifice I had made before. I felt trapped between the world I had built for myself and the expectations everyone else placed on me. I opened my bank app, staring at the balance, my thumb hovering over the transfer button. A tiny voice in my head screamed, "Don't do it. Don't let this become permanent." But it was drowned out by a louder, older voice I had carried for years. "You are responsible. You always fix things." I transferred the money, large enough to cover the eviction and the following month, promising myself I'd never let this happen again. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, the hum of the heater and the faint smell of wet pavement filtering in through the cracked window. The rain drummed against the glass, echoing the anxious rhythm in my chest. I tried to convince myself it was just 1 month, just a temporary fix. But a small, sinking feeling settled in my stomach, an uneasy certainty that this wasn't a one-time emergency. Something had shifted. That transfer wasn't just money changing accounts, it was a crack forming in the foundation I had built for myself. And I didn't yet realize how wide that crack would eventually spread. Weeks passed, and at first, I told myself I had handled it. My brother's crisis was over, and life should have returned to a normal rhythm. But then, little things began to stand out. I started noticing social media posts, new furniture, nights out with friends I hadn't met, a gaming console he hadn't owned before. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe it was borrowed, maybe it was gifts, maybe I was overreacting. Then I checked my bank account. My stomach sank. The money I had sent wasn't earmarked for rent anymore. It was gone. Every penny. No repayment, no trace of it being used for bills. My fingers trembled as I refreshed the page over and over, hoping it was a glitch. But the numbers never changed. I confronted him over the phone, voice tighter than I intended. "Where did the money go?" I asked. Silence. Then a scoff. "Relax, it's not like it was yours. You were never using it anyway." I stared at the screen, heart pounding, disbelief and rage battling each other. My brother, the same person I had saved countless times, the same person I trusted, had stolen from me. I called my parents, desperate for some support, some validation. Their voices, normally warm and comforting, were cool and dismissive. "Don't make this about money. You're overreacting. He's just young. You've always been so uptight about finances." The walls I had relied on, the people who were supposed to care, were already crumbling. Sitting alone in my apartment that night, the hum of the heater filling the silence, I felt a strange combination of anger and dread. Something had shifted irreversibly. The man I thought I had raised, helped, and protected had taken advantage of my trust. And the worst part? Everyone knew. Everyone except me. I realized then that this wasn't just a betrayal, it was a turning point. The life I thought I controlled, the safety I had painstakingly built for myself, was suddenly on shaky ground. And I had no idea how deep the cracks would go. I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt at first. Maybe it was a misunderstanding, a miscommunication, anything but deliberate theft. So I confronted him directly, voice low but steady. "I need answers. Where did the rent money go?" There was a pause, longer than any pause should be, and then a shrug. "You worry too much. It's handled." Handled. That word hit me like a punch. I asked again, firmer this time. "Handled? I trusted you. Every month, I trusted you." He laughed, a hollow, self-assured laugh that I didn't recognize. "You always overthink everything. Relax. It's not that serious." My parents joined the conversation soon after, their voices soft, almost sympathetic toward him, but cutting me off at every chance. "You're being unreasonable. He's still learning. Don't make this about money." I stared at my phone, disbelief and frustration coiling in my chest. The pattern was clear now, my family had already picked a side, and it wasn't me. My sacrifices, my years of silent support, were irrelevant. The narrative had shifted, my loyalty was being framed as entitlement. Over the following days, I started uncovering small lies. The emergency that led to the transfer had never existed in the way I was told. The rent hadn't been overdue. His job cuts were fabricated, the calls to landlords exaggerated. Everything had been constructed to draw me in, to make me complicit, to make me feel like the villain if I hesitated. I couldn't sleep that night. The city outside my window felt cold, distant, as if mocking me. Rain streaked the glass, blending with the unease pooling in my chest. I realized this wasn't just a theft of money, it was a theft of trust, of years of effort, and perhaps the hardest thing to swallow, the betrayal of blood. And as the room fell silent, I knew one truth for certain: things were going to get worse before they got better. The stage had been set, and I was no longer just a player, I was a target. It didn't stop at the money. That would have been bad enough, but the gaslighting started almost immediately. My parents, the very people who had once praised my sacrifices, began turning the narrative around. "You're so obsessed with money. You've always valued it over family. He's just sensitive. You've been too harsh on him." My brother, meanwhile, acted like nothing had happened, grinning in the background as if I was the one overreacting. One night, I confronted him again, my voice trembling despite my effort to remain calm. "You took everything I saved. Do you even understand what that means?" He leaned back on the couch, arms crossed, smirk curling his lips. "You weren't using it. You've always been too uptight. Stop pretending this is some huge sacrifice on your part." I could feel my chest tighten, my throat burn with frustration. My parents piled on over the phone, their tone disappointed, almost disappointed in me for having the audacity to ask for accountability. "He's struggling. You need to give him a break. You're being so cruel." Cruel. That word rang in my ears as I sank into the couch, staring at the cracked ceiling, trying to breathe through the panic. Every conversation became a trap. Every plea for honesty was met with manipulation. My reality started to fracture. I questioned myself, my perception, even my sanity. How could the same family I had poured years into suddenly turn against me? The worst part was the silence from everyone who mattered. Friends, extended family, even mentors. I didn't tell them the full story because it felt like shame was dripping from my words. I was the villain in my own life, painted that way by the people I loved most. Lying there in the dim glow of my apartment, I realized I was utterly alone. Every protective instinct, every ounce of trust, every bit of patience, it had all been weaponized against me. And deep down, I knew the betrayal was only going to escalate from here. The stage was set for the lowest point yet. That night, I finally allowed myself to feel it, the full weight of everything. I sat on my bed, the glow of the streetlight spilling across the floor, my head in my hands, heart hammering in my chest. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the heater, but inside, it was chaos. For years, I had been the dependable one, the fixer, the safety net. And now? Alone. Completely alone. I did the math in my head, tracing every dollar I had sent, every favor, every sacrifice, every night spent working extra shifts to cover someone else's life. The realization hit me like a gut punch. I had been building a life that no one respected, no one valued, and worst of all, no one was on my side. Not my parents, not my brother, not anyone. I had been erased, my efforts invisible, my sacrifices twisted into proof of my supposed cruelty. I called my brother one last time, voice cracking. "Do you even feel guilty?" There was silence at first. Then a shrug, a laugh that made my blood run cold. "Guilt? Don't be ridiculous. You've always been so uptight about money. This is life." My parents' voices echoed in my mind, reminding me of how I had broken him by asking for accountability. I lay on my bed afterward, staring at the ceiling, numb. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, and I couldn't stop replaying every interaction, every manipulation, every moment I had been exploited. It was suffocating. The betrayal wasn't just financial, it was emotional, familial, existential. For the first time in my life, I allowed myself to admit it. I was disposable. The person I had spent years supporting had no intention of reciprocating, my parents were complicit in the lie, and I had no allies left. And as I sat there in the dim glow, alone with my rage and heartbreak, a thought whispered in the back of my mind, maybe the only way out of this was to step completely away. To walk away. To let the consequences fall where they may. But taking that first step would be harder than anything I'd ever done. I woke the next morning with a heavy sense of clarity. I could scream, I could threaten, I could drag this betrayal through the streets for everyone to see, but I realized none of that would fix anything. Anger alone wouldn't recover my savings, and it certainly wouldn't change the fact that the people I trusted most had already chosen their sides. The temptation to lash out was enormous, but so was the knowledge that every outburst would only give them more power over me. So I did the only thing I could. I withdrew. No more rent transfers, no more favors, no more emergency rescues. I started answering calls with silence or polite deflection. My brother noticed immediately, his voice sharp over the phone. "What's going on? You can't just ignore me." I let the silence stretch before replying, low and firm, "I'm done." My parents, predictably, panicked. My mom called every day, a mix of tears and pleading. "You can't abandon him now. You're being so selfish." My dad's voice was cooler but no less manipulative. "He's struggling. You always think everything is yours to manage. You're overreacting." For the first time in years, I felt a strange sense of peace amidst the chaos. There was no yelling, no dramatics, just a quiet, deliberate boundary I refused to cross. And with that, I began to notice small cracks appearing in their narrative, subtle panic as they realized my withdrawal wasn't temporary. Walking away didn't feel heroic or vindictive, it felt like survival. The realization was bitter and freeing all at once. I had spent years being everyone's safety net, and now, simply by choosing silence, I was reclaiming a piece of myself they had never valued. But even in that quiet, I couldn't shake the tension, the unspoken knowledge that consequences were already brewing. Karma, in ways I couldn't yet see, was quietly gathering its weight, and when it hit, there would be no one to shield them. The first few weeks after I stopped helping were almost surreal. My brother, once cocky and untouchable, started missing payments, calls from landlords became frequent, and the frantic texts that used to be aimed at me were now panicked demands for someone, anyone, to step in. I watched from the sidelines, silent and detached, as the consequences of his choices began to unfold. There was no gloating, just a quiet satisfaction in seeing honesty and responsibility start to matter where they had never mattered before. My parents, who had always coddled him, were now scrambling. My mom's voice cracked over the phone one morning. "This can't be happening. You have to help him." My dad's tone was sharper, stressed. "We've never seen him fail like this before. You need to step up." For the first time, I felt a strange power, not from revenge, but from simply refusing to be manipulated anymore. I could see the stress in their eyes during the rare family calls. The same people who had painted me as heartless were now frantic, realizing that life without my intervention was harsh and unforgiving. My brother's confidence, once so unshakable, was collapsing under its own weight. Rent notices piled up, utilities were cut off, and his casual lifestyle evaporated into missed payments and broken promises. Walking past the apartment building where he lived, I could almost feel the tension in the air. Doors slammed, voices argued, the faint smell of burnt coffee and frustration drifting out of the windows. I didn't intervene. I didn't feel the need to. I had already done more than enough for years, and it was finally time for the universe to handle the rest. And yet, as I sat back in my quiet apartment, I realized that this was only the beginning. Karma doesn't move fast, it moves with precision. The cracks in the facade were widening, and I didn't need to touch a thing. Eventually, the consequences would speak louder than anything I could say or do. It happened unexpectedly, one rainy afternoon, when my brother showed up at my door. His posture was defensive, eyes darting like a cornered animal. "We need to talk," he said, voice tight. I gestured for him to sit, my own calmness belying the storm inside me. For the first time, the roles had reversed. He looked vulnerable, while I felt a strange, solid strength. I laid it out, plain and unflinching. "Do you understand what you did? You took my trust, my money, my time. I gave you every chance to be accountable, and you chose lies. Not me. You." He flinched but tried to deflect. "You're overreacting. It was money. You always make it a bigger deal than it is." I felt my chest tighten, not with anger, but with disbelief. The same person I had sacrificed everything for was still blind to his own betrayal. Then my parents joined the conversation, their voices a mixture of guilt and defensiveness. We didn't mean for this to go this far. We thought you'd understand him." Their attempt to rationalize years of enabling made me realize they weren't going to apologize, they were still protecting him. I looked at both of them, my voice steady and deliberate. "Love without respect isn't love. You've all chosen your side, and I choose mine. I'm done being the scapegoat." I left the apartment that day with nothing but my dignity and my resolve. No yelling, no threats, just a quiet finality that spoke louder than any argument ever could. The relief was immediate, but so was the heaviness of the years I had lost. Every betrayal, every manipulated emotion, every sleepless night, it was all behind me now. I had finally set boundaries they couldn't cross. As I walked away, the rain washing over me, I realized something profound. Walking away didn't feel like revenge. It felt like reclaiming a life that had been mine all along, one they had tried to control for too long. And in that quiet, rainy street, I understood that some lessons are learned not by confrontation, but by standing still and letting the consequences fall where they belong. Months passed after that final confrontation, and the world felt lighter, almost impossibly so. For the first time in years, I didn't wake up with that tight knot in my chest, that constant pressure of being everyone's savior. My savings began to grow again, slowly, steadily, but more importantly, I could breathe without guilt pressing down on me. I realized that the money was never the core of the issue, it was my energy, my trust, my emotional labor that had been drained for years. I started doing things for myself again, small things at first, late-night walks, coffee at the cafe I used to pass without stopping, finally buying the books I had been postponing for so long. Each little act felt revolutionary. I wasn't just surviving, I was reclaiming my life piece by piece. The silence from my family, which once felt heavy and punishing, now felt freeing. I didn't have to explain, justify, or save anyone. Word got around eventually. My brother's life continued to unravel under the weight of his own choices. He lost apartments, opportunities, and slowly, respect. My parents, predictably, scrambled, trying to patch what they had broken, but the moment of dependency had passed. I observed quietly, without malice, knowing that karma had its own way of balancing the scales. Looking back, the hardest lesson wasn't about money. It was about understanding who truly valued you and who simply took advantage of your generosity. I learned that being generous doesn't mean being exploited, and loving your family doesn't mean letting them destroy you. Now, when I think of the years I lost, I feel neither regret nor lingering anger. I feel clarity, peace, power. I took a step back, let the consequences unfold, and in doing so, I discovered a freedom I hadn't known existed. Sometimes, the strongest revenge isn't in action, it's in walking away. And as I sit quietly, watching my own life rebuild with my own hands, I know this, for the first time in a long time, I am truly free.